an animal cell and a plant cell work like a factory, build up the cell and build up, and in this case, what they did, they basically map out the protein and kind of take the picture of the protein factory. So they were awarded Nobel Prize because of this.
My answer is, so what? They were awarded a Nobel Prize. They should have gotten the prize. Why? Because they discovered properties in nature. I don't see any problem with that. I don't see how it supports your argument at all. I like your phrase when you said works like a factory. Works like a factory. Okay, it works like a factory. In other words, that's talking about an analogy. Factory is a word that we use to describe buildings and the equipment inside the buildings that produce man-made objects. And to say that something in nature works like a factory is simply to point out an analogy or a similarity. Big deal. Just because two things are similar in some respects does not mean that they are similar in all respects. Your argument basically goes like this. It has 3 steps. The first step is humans make complex objects. Duh, yeah, that's right. Step 2, complex objects exist in nature. Duh, yeah, that's true. Not a problem. But here's where you make the big irrational step. Step 3, therefore, from the other 2 steps, all complex objects in nature were made by an intelligent agent. No, that conclusion does not follow from the premises. You've constructed an illogical argument. So your model of the universe does contradict rationality. You said what is important is not what people in history believed. I agree with that. That's not necessarily important, although you could say that people 1,500 years ago were less knowledgeable than they are today. Also, it's not important whether people laugh at your theory or not. You said what's important is whether it makes sense and whether it goes along with reason or contradicts reason. My theory makes sense. Makes perfectly good sense. It's easy to understand. It's simpler than your idea. And it goes along with reason. It doesn't contradict reason. Yours contradicts reason. Your 3-step argument is illogical. It just simply does not work. So first I challenge you. You haven't answered some questions, but I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. I think what's really, I'm not saying that those scientists should not have been awarded Nobel Prize. What I'm saying that if those scientists were awarded Nobel Prize because what they did was really the product of hard work and high intelligence, it wasn't something like an ordinary person could have done. That's why they were actually awarded for that. So, but what they did ultimately was nothing different than just taking and mapping a complex factory within a cell. So it's, in this case, if you use analogy, it's like if I come here and actually map the IBM factory, and by IBM factory, and I map it very nice inside of it and show every machine and show the connection and everything, it kind of become a picture of that. Now, the point is that if I took the picture of, make the picture of IBM factory, and if because of doing such hard work with high intelligence, if I am awarded Nobel Prize, and in this case I will say, if you give prize to the one that will take the picture of factory but give no praise to the one that who actually made the factory, that is completely irrational. That is something hard for me to comprehend. That's why what I see scientists try to take the picture of the factories or reveal the works of God in the universe, And we appreciate their work because it helps us to better, improve our life condition. But what happened, even though we appreciate and award the scientists, and we forget to praise the maker of those complex objects. So, and that's why to me it's like when it's not only this. So basically, when look at the universe, you see that in this case, God creating many factors like proteins in a cell, and basically showing his mercy, his knowledge, his power, his wisdom to every reasonable intelligent being. Now, as an intelligent being, we discover and unveil those complex objects, but somehow we don't go further and ask how come those complex objects came into existence. Could we claim just they were the product of wind and sand? So the point is that what you're saying and what the secular science is saying, that there's no intelligence, it's just a wind and sand, it's just an energy and basic element. That's hard for me to acknowledge. That's hard for me to swallow. That's what I'm saying.
Well, for Furkan, I'm afraid you've made a classic error in thinking. It's called question begging. You said you couldn't figure out why we don't give praise to the one who made the factory. Well, that assumes that someone made the factory. So that's called question begging. In other words, you're assuming to be true what you're trying to show is true. It's also a type of circular reasoning. It's a classic error. A lot of people make the same mistake, so you ought not feel bad that you're making that mistake. But you can't say that we ought to give God praise if you haven't shown that there's any God involved in the process. If God exists and he created or arranged living things, and you still haven't said which he did, then we'll give him a Nobel Prize. Once we make the discovery that he exists, we'll bow down to him, we'll praise him. I would have no problem with that. But see, the thing is, you're baking your question. You're trying to just say, everyone, let's just assume God exists and accept what I say is true. That's not the way reason works. You've got to build up good reasons, a strong argument, a rational argument for why God exists. Just at the outset, my model explains the facts as well as your model. And you still haven't recognized that. Furthermore, my model is simpler than your model. Yours involves an extra step. Remember, we had super being, God, with his knowledge, creating properties of substance in the universe, followed by human beings coming along and discovering those properties. Step 1, step 2, step 3. We'll just cut off the first step. We don't need that. It's unnecessary. The properties in the universe, the properties of objects and particles are there, and we simply investigate them and we make discoveries about them. That's what those scientists did. So what? It's a very elegant model. It works. Your invocation of God is not needed.